We're going to work with clip properties in this tutorial. And remember, clips are files that are inside a multi-track session. So we're going to talk about properties for those files, those clips that are inside multi-track sessions. And notice we're starting with a blank slate. That's because I want to go get two multi-track sessions, and we'll do that together. Just double click here inside the Files panel to open up the Open File dialog box. Go down to the Working Files Multi-Track Sessions subfolder and go click on the 1210 Clip Properties 1, and then Control or Command click on the second one to select the second one, and then click Open. That brings in both of those multi-track sessions. And you can see those multi-track sessions in this drop-down list here at the top of the editor panel. Right now, number 2 is selected, and all the rest of the files here are accessible as well. I want to open up number 1, so select number 1 here. There we go. And number 1 is our good old familiar Gettysburg Address. So we're going to look at the clip properties for the clips here inside this multi-track session. To see the clip properties, there are two ways. You click on a clip and then right-click on it, and here are the clip properties. These 6 things right here: rename, clip gain, color, lock and time, loop, and mute. Now, if I want to rename it, you're going to see the second way to access clip properties. I click on rename, look over here to the left inside this panel, and watch what happens. Wham! The properties panel opens. So when you have a clip selected and you click on the Properties panel tab, that's the other way to access clip properties. And to me, this is the easier way, because you can always go to this tab and have all the properties visible. And the properties are down here in the basic settings portion of the Properties panel. And then the name of the file is at the top here. So if I want to change the name of Gettysburg 1, I can change it, let's say, to Gettysburg A or something like that. If I do that, that name shows up here in the clip, but doesn't show up here in the file. We're not changing the file. Remember, the multi-track session is a real-time thing. It doesn't change the original file. It just changes how it behaves, how it's referenced here in a multi-track session. So we changed the name that way, and I could change the rest of them if I wanted to, but we'll just do that for an example. The next thing down the line is clip gain. Now, gain is different here inside a multi-track session than it is inside the waveform editor. If I double-click this clip and go to the waveform editor and then increase the volume here by dragging this up, the amplitude as they call it here, I've changed the amplitude. I'll deselect this by clicking on it. Go back to the multi-track session. You can see, look at that, I've increased the volume because I changed the clip. And if you look over here, you see an asterisk next to it saying you've made a temporary file in a temporary folder. And if you want to save this file with its changes, then make sure you do that before you close down Audition. Well, I don't want to change the original file. I want to work with it in real time here in a multi-track session. So I'm going to undo that. Now, normally I can undo by going Control or Command Z, right? Or I can go to this Edit menu and go Undo. Ooh, but that just changes the name. It doesn't change what I just did. So, how can I undo it? Well, the only way I can undo that volume change is by going back to the waveform editor. And now we can undo it, because that'll be accessible here only within the editor. Undo Amplify, or I can go Control or Command Z. So that reduces the volume back down to its original setting. Back to multitrack now. I want to change the gain of this clip. So I'm going to do it down here in the Properties panel. If I clip gain, I just drag this and maybe go to +10 or so. Now notice the waveform didn't change at all. I just changed the gain, and that shows up here with this little icon with a number next to it. So now this will be much louder. Our Father is brought forth on this continent than the one next to it. Are engaged in a... That's because we changed the gain. We didn't change the waveform. We didn't change the original file, just the gain here as it's referencing the file back on the hard drive. I'd rather change the gain for all of these guys at once so they're even. So I'm going to go Control or Command Z to undo that gain change. I'm going to select them all. Now, before I've shown you how to select clips by clicking on one and then Control clicking on another and Control clicking on another. You can select contiguous clips using a marquee selection. So to marquee select, you need to use the Move tool. The other tools won't work when you marquee select. So click over at the end and just start dragging. When you start dragging, you start marquee selecting all those clips. Now that they're all selected, I can't change the name because it says multiple clips selected here, but I can change the gain for all of them at once. So I'll increase the gain to about 10, and notice how they're all popping up over there to show that I've changed the gain for all 6 of them at once. So they'll all be evenly increased. And it's better to have this as a starting point because I recorded this kind of at a low volume. So changing the gain here rather than changing it over here for the track, I think is a better way to work. Great Civil War. There you go. So now the gain is equal across all those clips. You can also do what's called locking a clip in time. So I'll select this clip here. It opens it up over here in the Properties panel. And I click this little lock in time, and watch a little icon will appear here with a little lock on it. What that means is I can't drag it left or right. Can't drag it left or right here. I can pull it down to another track, but I can't drag it left or right here either. It locks it in time. I'll bring it back. I'll unlock it. How about that? I can also mute a clip. I'm jumping down, I'm skipping loop, and I'm skipping color. I'll do those in the other multi-track sessions. We'll go down to mute. You may want to, let's say, mute one of these clips, not the entire track. You can mute the entire track right there, but if you want to mute just one of the clips, that really is not effective. To do that, you select the clip, let's say that one, and click the mute button here. It turns it gray and also puts a little speaker with the no symbol going through it. So those are those guys. Mute, lock in time, and gain, and changing the name. Let's switch over to the other multi-track session, number 2. This is more like what you expect to see with a multi-track session. We have a bunch of clips here, and I want to talk about using color here. So let me zoom out just a little bit so you can see all of them. There you go. I want to change the color of some of them because it's easier to work with them if you can group them by color. So I get organ right, organ left. I'm going to click on this one and then control click on this one to select 2 clips. And here they are showing up in the basic settings under properties. It says multiple clips selected, so I can't change the name, but I can change the color. And this little red line through the green means this is the default color. That's what we've got there. It doesn't mean no, it just means that that's the default color. I click on that, I can change to another color. Let's say purple. All right, click OK. It's purple when they're selected like that. When you deselect, it's kind of a dull looking purple. Let's go down and have all the drums have the same color. This time I'm going to marquee select them. I've got the move tool selected. I'm just going to marquee select by clicking out here and dragging like that. And that marquee selects all 3 of them. So now they're all active. I can change the color of those as well. Let's make them a different color. We'll make them orange, let's say. They'll look lovely bright orange when they're selected. They look kind of brown when they're deselected. And finally, we're going to take a look at how you loop a clip. I've got this one little clip down here in the corner muted so that in case you played this multi-track session, you wouldn't hear this guy because it doesn't fit at all. It's a little organ loop down here. I'm going to unmute it and solo it, actually. This is something we used in the early demos. I just made it shorter. I just cut it off just to use it for this purpose. I want to loop it. So let me zoom in on it a bit by pressing the plus key a couple of times. There it is, this little collection of organ chords here. Now, if I want to play that over and over again, I could click it, copy it, and paste it, and paste it, and paste it along the line here. But it's much easier to turn that into what's called a loop. So you select the clip, click on loop, and now it's a loop. And you can see it's a loop because it's got this little icon down there with a little arrow on it. And now if I hover my cursor over the end, I get the trim tool, but look at the bottom right-hand corner of the trim tool. It's got a little looping arrow on it saying that this is not really a trim you're about to do here. This is a loop that you're going to do. If I drag this to the right, it just duplicates it in loops like that. It'll just play it over and over again. It can snap to the loop point. She drags slowly by that loop point. So each of these guys is a repeat of this clip. And loops are pretty cool. The looping feature in Audition is not fully functional. It's kind of let's say, a subset of what a true looping feature would be. There was a full implementation of looping 2 versions ago. Now it's a partial implementation because of the porting to Mac in between that time. But you still can do loops, and we're going to talk about loops in more detail in the last section of these tutorials when I look at tapping into Adobe's 10,000 free music and sound effect clips. I'll explain how to loop those guys later, but you can see at least here, there is that looping feature here built into each clip. And once you turn it on, you can just duplicate the clip simply by dragging it along like that using the trim tool with a loop connected down to the lower right-hand corner. So those are the 6 clip properties here inside a multi-track session in Audition.